Eleanor Hartwell's back hit the rough wooden wall as two massive shadows filled the doorway. "Your father's prayers won't save this town, Miss Eleanor." Cole Maddox's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. His twin brother Cade stepped closer, hat in hand, eyes burning with something that made her breath stop. "But you're smart enough to know what really keeps people alive out here." She should have screamed, should have run. Instead, she lifted her chin and met their gaze, feeling every rule her father ever taught her turn to ash. Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel and stay until the end to see how Eleanor's impossible choice changes everything. Comment below with your city so we can see how far this story travels. The wagon wheel cracked against a rock, and Eleanor's father nearly flew sideways. She grabbed his arm, steadying him, but Reverend Samuel Hartwell didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the cluster of buildings ahead. "Our mission, Eleanor. The Lord has brought us to save these lost souls." Eleanor looked at what he called lost. Men walked the street with guns like they were pocket watches. Women's skirts ended above mud-caked boots. A saloon twice the size of any church she'd ever seen spilled laughter that sounded like freedom and danger mixed together. "Father, I don't think—" But Samuel was already climbing down his Boston coat, instantly gray with dust. "Reverend?" The wagon driver Pike spat tobacco juice. "You sure town's got its own rules. That's why we're here, to bring civilization." Pike muttered something that sounded like a prayer for fools. Eleanor gathered her skirts and stepped down. Her boots touched frontier soil, and the world shifted not the ground, but something deeper, like crossing into a country where all her careful education meant nothing. "Miss Hartwell." The voice came from behind her, deep enough to feel in her chest. She turned and had to tilt her head back. Way back. The man was built like a mountain. His twins stood beside him, identical except for something in their eyes. One curious one calculating. "Cole Maddox." The curious one swept his hat off. "This is Cade." Cade nodded, hat staying on. "Heard a preacher was coming. Nobody mentioned a daughter." Heat crawled up Eleanor's neck. Not embarrassment. These men looked at her like she was real, not decorative. "Eleanor Hartwell. I'm his daughter, not his baggage." Cole's eyebrows shot up. Cade's mouth almost smiled. Didn't mean offense. Cole's grin came easy. "Just surprised. Most preachers leave their women safe back east. Most preachers don't have daughters who refuse to be left." Samuel appeared slightly breathless. "Mr. Maddox, I was told to seek you out." "Both of us." Cade's voice was quieter than his brother's, but carried more weight. "We own the M Ranch, biggest for 100 miles. We heard you need timber for a church." Cole's grin widened. "We can help." Samuel's face lit up. "The Lord provides gentlemen I cannot express." "Don't thank us yet." Cade's gray eyes flicked to Eleanor, then back. "We help folks who help themselves. You build a church better be worth having. The word of God is always, with respect, Reverend." Cole cut in, still friendly but firm. "Words don't mean much without action. You preach about loving your neighbor. Better prove it when desperate men come stealing cattle and your neighbor's facing ruin." Eleanor watched her father's confidence crack. In Boston, his sermons moved society women to tears. Here his certainty was being measured against survival. "We should discuss terms," Cade said. "Pike misses. Chen got room?" "Always got room for paying customers. Clean beds, hot food, no gunplay indoors. Chinese woman runs the boarding house." Samuel's surprise showed. "Problem with that?" Cade's question came soft, dangerous. "No, of course not. All God's children." "Save the sermon." Cole's grin took the sting out. Mrs. Chen's husband was the best cook in California before he died. She took over and does twice his business. You preach at her, she'll throw you out. Eleanor found her voice. We won't insult anyone, Mr. Maddox. My father builds bridges, not burns them. Cade looked at her, then really looked like seeing past her dress to something underneath. Smart girl. Woman. I'm 22, not 12. The almost smile became real. Cole laughed. My apologies, Miss Hartwell. Something in Cade's tone might have been respect. Smart woman? They walked toward the boarding house, the twins flanking Samuel, who chattered about his vision. Eleanor followed, watching how people responded. Men tipped hats. Women nodded. Even hard-looking characters outside the saloon straightened as they passed. Power. Not the kind her father wielded through moral authority. Something more primal. Mrs. Chen was 50-something with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She looked Eleanor up and down once, then nodded. You help in kitchen, I give better rate. Samuel started to protest, but Eleanor spoke first. What kind of help? Morning bread, evening dishes. You know how to work or just look pretty? The challenge hit like a slap. Good. Eleanor was tired of being porcelain. I can work, show me. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Come. Men talk boring business. We talk real things. Eleanor glanced at her father, who looked torn. The twins watched with interest. Let her go, Reverend. Cole sounded casual. Mrs. Chen's tougher than most men here. Your daughter's safe. That's not what Samuel stopped hearing how it sounded. Eleanor has always been independent. Good quality out here, Cade said. Eleanor followed Mrs. Chen through a doorway. The older woman turned, arms crossed. Why you really here, girl? The directness caught Eleanor off guard. My father, I ask about you. Why you come? Eleanor considered lying, decided against it. Because Boston felt like a cage. Because every man who courted me looked at my father's reputation, not my face. Because I wanted to see if the world was bigger than parlor rooms and proper manners. Mrs. Chen studied her, then nodded. You survive here. Maybe thrive. But understand something. What? Those two men, Maddox brothers, they good men by frontier rules. But not Boston gentlemen. They see what they want, they take it. They protect what they value, they kill for it. You understand? Eleanor's throat went dry. Are you warning me away? No. Warning you to know what you choosing. Out here, woman make own choice. But once made, she live with it. No society to hide behind, just her decision and consequences. I'm not choosing anyone. I came with my father. Mrs. Chen handed her a knife and potatoes. Then why you look at them like puzzle you want solved? Because they were. Cole with his easy charm. Cade with his quiet intensity. Both completely unlike anyone she'd known. Curiosity isn't the same as interest. Out here, same thing. Curiosity kills cats. Sometimes makes women very happy. Sometimes very dead. You be careful which. They worked in silence. Through thin walls, male voices rumbled her father's enthusiasm, occasional laughter. They offering good deal, Mrs. Chen said. Brothers help build church, your father preaches everyone happy. What's the catch? Smart woman. Catch is, they decide acceptable preaching. Man preaches hellfire at ranch hands, makes workers scared. Brothers have words. They practical. Want church for weddings, funerals, Christmas, not for making people miserable. Samuel believes in redemption and love, not hellfire. Then he fine. Mrs. Chen paused, knife hovering. But he believe woman obey man, be quiet and modest, and never question that belief not work here. Frontier women too strong. We have to be. I've noticed. You run this alone. Husband die 3 years ago. Town expect me to sell, go back to San Francisco. I stay. Run better business than he did. Some men not like. Maddox brothers make clear I stay if I want. No one bother me after. They protected you. They protect anyone who earn it by working hard, treating people fair. They not saints, they kill men before. Rustlers claim jumpers man, who force himself on saloon girl. But they have code. Understand their code, you survive. Fight it, you leave, or die. Eleanor's hands stilled. That's barbaric. No, that's survival. Boston rules don't work when law is 3 days right away. The door swung open. Samuel appeared, face flushed. Eleanor, wonderful news. The Maddox brothers will provide all timber, and they've assembled a crew to start next week. Cole and Cade filled the doorway behind him. Mrs. Chen's posture shifted, not afraid but aware. That's generous, Eleanor said carefully. Practical, Cade corrected. Town needs a church. Good for morale. Good for business. Plus, Cole added with that grin, we're curious what a Boston preacher makes of our town. Should be entertaining. Samuel missed the implication. I hope to exceed your expectations. With God's grace, we'll build not just a church, but a community founded on Christian values. The twins exchanged a glance, some silent communication. Looking forward to it, Reverend. Cade's tone gave nothing away. They left. Eleanor watched them go, noting how they moved in perfect rhythm. Your father good man, Mrs. Chen said quietly. But he not understand here yet. You do. That make you dangerous. To whom? Everyone. Woman who see clearly always dangerous. She see lies, see weakness, see truth, men want hidden. Mrs. Chen's knife resumed chopping. Maddox brothers see that in you. That why they interested. They're not. They are. I see how they look. Like good horse or promising land. Something worth having, worth fighting for. Mrs. Chen's eyes met Eleanor's. Question is what you see when you look at them. Eleanor didn't answer. What she saw was possibility. Risk. Everything her father called sin and everything her spirit called life. Morning came with bread smells and hammer sounds. Eleanor dressed and found her father outside pointing at empty ground while explaining his vision to skeptical-looking men. The Maddox twins stood off to the side. When they saw Eleanor, Cole tipped his hat. Cade just looked at her with that measuring gaze. Miss Hartwell, Cole called. Your father says you have opinions about design. Samuel turned surprised. Eleanor has always had an eye. What does this church need to do? Eleanor interrupted, walking toward them. Besides Sunday services. The workers looked confused. Cole's grin widened. Cade's expression sharpened. Explain, Cade said. You have a saloon for drinking, a store for supplies, a boarding house for sleeping. What don't you have? A church for praying, one worker offered. Besides that, weddings, funerals, town meetings, harvest celebrations. Where do people gather for things that aren't about God or whiskey? Silence. The men exchanged looks. Nowhere, Cade said quietly. We use the saloon. Then build a church that's also a community hall. Make it bigger. Add a room that closes for services but opens for gatherings. Give people a reason to come even if they're not religious. Samuel started protesting. Eleanor, a church is sacred. A church is a building, Father. What makes it sacred is how it's used. Would you rather have people inside for dances and meetings than avoiding it because they think religion isn't for them? The workers were nodding. Cole looked impressed. Cade studied her with something like approval. Smart, Cade said. Practical. Reverend, your daughter just made your church 10 times more useful. But the sanctity will survive reality, Eleanor finished. Trust me, if you want to reach these people, meet them where they are. Samuel's face went through several expressions before he sighed. When did you become so pragmatic? I learned from you. You've always adapted your message to your audience. This is the same thing. Cole laughed. I like her. Cade, we keeping her. The casual possessiveness should have offended Eleanor. Instead, it sent heat down her spine. That's not your decision, she said sharply. No. Kate agreed, eyes locked on hers. It's yours. But Cole's right. We like you. Worth knowing. Why? The question surprised them. Because you're honest, Cade said finally. You don't pretend. Out here that's rarer than gold. And you're not afraid, Cole added. You're a Boston lady in a town that eats Boston ladies for breakfast. But you're not. That's either brave or stupid. Both, Eleanor said. Usually at the same time. Cade's almost smile became real. Then you'll fit right in, Miss Hartwell. The church rose from dust over the next days. Eleanor found herself drawn into the work not building but planning, organizing, solving the 1,000 problems that arose when frontier practicality met religious idealism. She also found herself increasingly aware of the twins. They worked alongside their men, stripping to shirt sleeves under brutal sun. They moved in rhythm, anticipating movements, finishing sentences, when they spoke at all. But they were different men. Cole was fire quick to anger, quick to laugh, quick to decide, and damn the consequences. Cade was earth-solid patient, considering every angle before moving. And they were both watching her. Not constantly, not obviously, but she felt their attention like heat. When she helped Mrs. Chen bring water to workers, she'd look up to find Cade's eyes on her. When she laughed at something a ranch hand said, she'd catch Cole's grin. They were circling. Both of them. Like wolves deciding whether to approach or attack. 3 days into construction, it all went wrong. Eleanor was organizing lumber when she heard shouting. She turned to see 2 men facing off, one of the Maddox ranch hands and a townsman she'd seen at the saloon. This is our land. The townsman shoved the ranch hand. Church should be in town proper, not on Maddox property. Reverend agreed to this spot. The ranch hand shoved back. Better drainage, more space. More control for the Maddox brothers, you mean? Other men were gathering, choosing sides. Eleanor saw her father frozen, uncertain. The twins were across the site, too far to intervene quickly. She stepped between the 2 men. Stop! They both turned, surprised. Miss, this ain't your... the townsman started. This is everyone's concern. Eleanor cut him off. You're right. The church should serve the town, not the Maddox ranch. The townsman looked vindicated. The ranch hand looked betrayed. But, Eleanor continued, this land was donated with the best drainage and most space. If you have better land to offer, show us. If not, stop pretending your objection is about location, when it's really about pride. The townsman's face reddened. You calling me prideful? I'm saying if you care about this church, help build it. If you care about fighting the Maddox brothers, do it somewhere else. Don't use God's house as your battlefield. Silence fell. Every man there was staring at her. The townsman looked at the ranch hand, at Eleanor, at the gathering crowd. Finally, he spat in the dust. Fine, but I'm watching. Maddox brothers try to control what gets preached. I'll have something to say about it. He walked off. The crowd dispersed. The ranch hand nodded at Eleanor, respect in his eyes. Eleanor's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, willing them still. Well handled. She jumped. Cade had appeared beside her, silent as smoke. I just made an enemy, she said. No, you made him back down without making him lose face. That's harder. Cade's eyes searched her face. You're trembling. I've never done anything like that. You'll do it again. Leadership suits you. Cole appeared on her other side. Thought you were just the preacher's pretty daughter. Turns out you're the preacher's dangerous daughter. I'm not dangerous. You are, Cade said quietly. You don't know it yet. That makes you more dangerous. They walked away, leaving Eleanor standing in the dust, wondering what she'd just unleashed. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. The room was stifling. She dressed and slipped outside, needing air, needing space to think. The half-built church looked like a skeleton in the moonlight. She walked toward it, boots crunching in the dirt. A sound behind her made her turn. The drunk man stumbled from the shadows, and Eleanor's breath caught. He was one of the townsmen, the one from the confrontation, she realized. His eyes were unfocused, mean. "Preacher's daughter," he slurred. "Think you're so smart, so high and mighty." Eleanor backed toward the church. "You're drunk. Go sleep it off." "Don't tell me what to do." He lurched forward. "You Maddox whore. See you making eyes at both of them. Know what you are." Fear spiked cold in her chest. She opened her mouth to scream. A hand clamped over the drunk's shoulder and spun him around. Cade stood there, still dressed, despite the late hour. His face was carved from stone. "Walk away," Cade said. His voice was soft, terrifying. "I was just... walk away." The drunk stumbled back, fear cutting through alcohol. He turned and ran. Eleanor's legs went weak. She sat hard on a stack of lumber. Cade turned to her. "You hurt?" "No, just scared." "Good. Fear keeps you alive." He sat beside her, the lumber creaking under his weight. "What are you doing out here alone?" "Couldn't sleep. Didn't think." "That's the problem. You're thinking like Boston still. Out here, woman alone at night is prey." Anger cut through her fear. "So I'm supposed to hide in my room like a good girl?" "No, you're supposed to be smart. Bring a weapon. Tell someone where you're going. Don't walk around alone when men are drunk and angry." "You sound like my father." "Your father doesn't know what men are capable of." Cade's eyes met hers. "I do." They sat in silence. The moon painted everything silver. Eleanor could feel heat coming off him, smell leather, and something else, horse maybe, and sage. "Thank you," she said finally, "for that." "Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you." That stung. "Then why?" "Because Cole would be devastated if something happened to you." Cade stood, brushing dust from his pants. "And what devastates him devastates me." "Wait." Eleanor stood too. "What does that mean?" Cade looked at her for a long moment. His hand came up, almost touched her face, then dropped. "It means you should go back inside, Miss Hartwell, and think very carefully about what you're starting here." "I'm not starting anything. You and your brother..." "We know exactly what we're starting." His voice was rough. "Question is, do you..." He walked away, leaving her standing there, heart pounding. Eleanor didn't tell her father about the incident. She didn't tell Mrs. Chen either. She kept working, kept planning, kept watching the church take shape. But everything had changed. She felt the twins watching her differently now. Cole's grins came with heat behind them. Cade's silences felt heavy with things unsaid. 5 days after the drunk man incident, Samuel gathered everyone to announce Sunday's sermon topic. "The sanctity of marriage," he declared, beaming. "The holy bond between one man and one woman as God intended." Eleanor's blood went cold. She glanced at the twins. Cole's jaw was tight. Cade's expression was unreadable. That evening, unable to help herself, Eleanor walked past the church. Voices drifted from inside Cole and Cade, thinking they were alone. "She's not meant for one man." Cole's voice frustrated. "Maybe she's not meant for any man." Cade thoughtful. "Or maybe..." Cole's voice dropped lower. Eleanor had to strain to hear. "Maybe she's meant for both of us." Silence. Then Cade. "You can't say that. You can't even think it." "Why not?" "Because her father's a preacher, because society says so." "Last I checked, we don't give a damn about society." "Because it would destroy her reputation. Destroy her." "Only if she lets it." Cole sounded certain. "Eleanor's not like other women. You've seen it. She doesn't care about their rules. Doesn't mean she'd accept ours. Only one way to find out." "No." Cade's voice was hard. "We don't... I won't. She deserves better than being caught between us." "Better than us? Or better than having to choose?" Eleanor's heart hammered so hard she thought they'd hear it. She pressed her back against the wall, unable to move, unable to breathe. She'll have to choose eventually, Cade said finally. Men like us don't share coal, not even brothers. Maybe men like us should start. Footsteps. Eleanor fled, running back toward the boarding house, mind reeling. They wanted her, both of them. And the terrifying thing, the thing that made her father's upcoming sermon feel like a noose tightening, was that some wild, reckless part of her wanted both of them too. Eleanor sat on her bed, hands clasped, trying to breathe. Sunday was in 3 days. 3 days until her father stood in front of the town and preached about the sanctity of one man, one woman. 3 days until he unknowingly drove a wedge between her and the only two men who'd ever looked at her like she was a person instead of a possession. 3 days to decide what kind of woman she was going to be. The kind who lived by rules written by men who feared anything they couldn't control, or the kind who wrote her own rules in a land too wild to tame. Outside the frontier, night swallowed all sounds except her own ragged breathing and the distant howl of something untamed calling to its pack. Eleanor unclenched her hands and looked at them, soft, unmarked, shaped by a life of safety and propriety. She wondered how long that would last. She wondered if she wanted it to last at all. 3 days turned into 3 sleepless nights. Eleanor moved through her tasks like a woman underwater, helping Mrs. Chen knead bread, organizing supplies for the church, smiling at her father's enthusiastic sermon preparations while her mind churned with the conversation she'd overheard. Maybe she's meant for both of us. The words circled in her head like vultures. She should have been horrified. Any proper Boston lady would have fainted at the suggestion. Instead, she lay awake each night wondering what it would mean, not just the scandal, but the reality. 2 men, 2 different souls, both wanting her, both impossible to choose between. "You look terrible," Mrs. Chen said, Saturday morning, studying Eleanor's face. "Not sleeping. The heat." Eleanor lied. Heat." Mrs. Chen's knowing eyes said she didn't believe a word. "Or maybe conscience keeping you awake." Eleanor's hands stilled over the dough. "What makes you say that? Woman your age, pretty like you two. Powerful men circling like hawks. Conscience always gets loud before big decision." Mrs. Chen shaped a loaf with practiced efficiency. "Question is, you listening to right voice?" "What do you mean?" "Conscience got 2 voices. One from what you taught, what society say, what father say, what church say. Other from what you know, what heart say, what body say, what soul say." Mrs. Chen met her eyes. "Most women never hear second voice. Too scared. You hear it." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Yes." "And what it telling you?" "Things I can't say out loud." Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. "Then maybe you ready for frontier truth. Out here, woman who follow her own knowing, not what she taught, but what she know that woman survive anything. Woman who only follow rules made by scared men in distant cities. She either become ghost or go back east. My father, your father good man, but he not living your life, you are." Mrs. Chen turned back to her work. "Tomorrow he preach about marriage, about one man, one woman as God intend. You think God, who made this big wild world, only imagine one small way to love?" The question hit Eleanor like cold water. She'd never thought of it that way. "The church says." "Church say lots of things. Once say sun move around earth. Say slavery God's will. Say woman can't own property, or choose her husband, or think for herself." Mrs. Chen's hands moved steadily. "Church say many things. Doesn't mean all true. Doesn't mean God agree." Eleanor stood there, bread dough forgotten, feeling something crack open inside her chest. "What if I'm wrong?" she whispered. "What if I make the wrong choice?" "Only wrong choice is one you make from fear instead of truth." Mrs. Chen glanced at her. "You afraid of what people say?" "That fear. You afraid of losing yourself. That wisdom. Learn difference." The kitchen door banged open. Cole Maddox filled the doorway, hat in hand, something urgent in his face. "Miss Hartwell, Need you at the church, now." Eleanor's heart jumped. "What's wrong?" "Your father and KD." Cole stopped choosing words carefully. "They're having a discussion, getting heated. You should come." Eleanor wiped her hands and followed Cole outside. He walked fast, his long legs eating ground. She had to almost run to keep up. "What kind of discussion?" "The kind where your father's using words like moral corruption, and Cade's using words like judgmental hypocrisy." Cole's jaw was tight. "Cade's usually the calm one, but your father touched a nerve." They reached the church. Inside, Samuel's voice rang out high and strained. "Cannot condone such arrangements, a man and a woman joined before God. That is marriage. Anything else is perversion." "Is it?" Cade's voice was deadly quiet. "Or is it just different from what you're comfortable with?" Eleanor stepped through the doorway. Her father stood on what would become the altar, face flushed. Cade faced him from the floor, arms crossed, looking like a mountain that had decided to stop being patient. "Eleanor." Samuel's face brightened with relief. Tell him that the sanctity of marriage is between the people involved and their understanding of God," Eleanor said clearly. "Not between them and your interpretation of Scripture." Samuel's mouth fell open. "Eleanor, I raised you better than—" "You raised me to think for myself, to question, to seek truth, not just accept tradition." Eleanor walked toward them, pulse hammering. "What are you really arguing about, Father?" Samuel's eyes darted between her and the twins. "I'm arguing about morality, about decency, about preventing this town from descending into chaos and sin." "You're arguing about control," Cade said flatly. "About forcing your Boston rules onto people who live by different codes." "There is no different code. God's law is—" "God's law says love your neighbor," Eleanor interrupted. "Judge not. Remove the beam from your own eye before criticizing the speck in another's. Should I continue?" Samuel looked like she'd slapped him. "You would quote Scripture at me, your own father. I would quote truth at anyone who's forgotten it." Eleanor's voice shook, but held steady. "What happened? What started this?" Cade's gray eyes met hers. "I told your father that his sermon tomorrow about the sanctity of marriage might not resonate with everyone here. That frontier life requires different arrangements sometimes. That judging people for how they survive is cruel. And I told him," Samuel's voice rose, "that God's law doesn't bend to convenience. That marriage is sacred between one man and one woman, and any deviation is sin." "What if two people love the same person?" The words left Eleanor's mouth before she could stop them. "What if a woman's heart is big enough for two men, or a man's for two women? What if the love is real and honest and hurts no one? Is that sin? Or is it just beyond your understanding?" The silence that fell was absolute. Samuel stared at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. Cade's expression went carefully blank. Cole, still standing in the doorway, made a small sound, surprise, or vindication, or both. "Eleanor," Samuel's voice cracked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe God is bigger than your rules, Father. Maybe love is more complicated than one man, one woman signed and sealed. Maybe—" She stopped, gathered courage. "Maybe the sanctity you're so worried about protecting isn't in the structure. It's in the honesty, the commitment, the choice to build something good together however that looks. This is about them, isn't it?" Samuel pointed at Cade, at Cole in the doorway. "They've corrupted you, filled your head with—" "They've done nothing," Eleanor said sharply, "except treat me like a thinking person instead of a decorative child. Except look at me and see someone capable of making her own choices. Choices that lead to damnation. Or choices that lead to life." Eleanor's voice broke. "You want to save souls. Father, start by seeing them as they are, not as you need them to be. Start by offering grace instead of judgment." Samuel's face crumpled. For the first time since they'd arrived, he looked small, uncertain, afraid. I don't know how to do that, he whispered. I don't know how to minister to people who don't want to be saved. Then learn. Eleanor's voice softened. Or admit this mission isn't about them. It's about proving something to yourself. The words hung in the air. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. He turned and walked out of the church, shoulders bent. Eleanor wanted to follow, wanted to take back the words, but they were true, and truth once spoken couldn't be unspoken. Well, Cole said from the doorway, that was something. I shouldn't have. Eleanor pressed her hands to her face. God, I just destroyed my father. No. Cade's voice was gentle. You told him truth he needed to hear. Whether he accepts it is his choice. Eleanor looked at him. At both of them. At the two men who'd somehow become the center of the storm her life had become. That conversation I overheard, she said. The one where you discussed whether I was meant for both of you. Cole went very still. Cade's jaw tightened. You weren't supposed to hear that, Cade said finally. But I did. Eleanor's heart hammered so hard she felt dizzy. And now I need to know, were you serious, or was it just talk between brothers? The twins looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. You want the truth? Cole's voice was rough. Or the answer that makes things easier? Truth. Always truth. Cole stepped into the church, closing the distance. Then yes. We were serious. We are serious. Both of us want you, Eleanor. Both of us see you not the preacher's daughter, not the Boston lady you. The woman smart enough to stand between fighting men and make them back down. Brave enough to tell her father hard truths. Strong enough to survive out here. But wanting isn't having, Cade added quietly. And we know what we're asking is impossible. Society doesn't allow it. Your father would never forgive it. The town would crucify you. So why say anything? Eleanor's voice shook. Why make me know? Because you deserve honesty, Cole said. Because pretending we don't feel what we feel is its own kind of lie. And because Cade's eyes locked on hers, you need to understand what you're choosing when you eventually choose. One of us or neither, but not both. Despite what Cole dreams, that's not how the world works. Maybe the world's wrong, Eleanor whispered. Maybe. Cade's almost smile appeared. But it's still the world we live in. Eleanor looked between them. Cole, all fire and impulse and fierce certainty. Cade, all patience and consideration and quiet strength. Two halves of something that together felt whole. I can't think about this now, she said. Not with my father. We know. Cole's hand reached out, almost touched her arm, dropped. Go. Take care of him. We'll be here when you're ready. Eleanor fled. She found Samuel in the boarding house, sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. Father. He looked up. His eyes were red. I've failed, he said simply. At everything. The church, the mission, you. Especially you. Eleanor sat beside him. You haven't failed. I've lost you. I can see it. You look at me like I'm a stranger now. I look at you like you're human, Eleanor corrected gently. Fallible and frightened and trying your best, just like everyone else. But I'm supposed to be better, supposed to be certain. How can I lead people if I'm... His voice broke. If I'm just as lost as they are. Maybe that's exactly why you can lead them, because you understand being lost. Samuel shook his head. The sermon tomorrow. Don't give it. He looked at her sharply. What? Don't preach about marriage. Don't preach about rules and sanctity and one right way. Eleanor took his hand. Preach about grace, about how God loves us even when we're confused and scared and making choices others don't understand. Preach about compassion, Father. It's what you do best. And the Maddox brothers, He stopped, unable to finish. Are men I respect, men who've been kind to us, nothing more. The lie tasted bitter but necessary. Whatever you think you saw, you're wrong. Am I? Samuel studied her face. Because I see the way they look at you, Eleanor. Like wolves circling prey. Or like men recognizing an equal, Eleanor said. Which terrifies you more? Samuel flinched. I want you safe. I want me alive, Eleanor countered. There's a difference. They sat in silence. Outside, the town settled into evening rhythms, laughter from the saloon horses being stabled, the distant bark of dogs. I don't know how to let you go, Samuel finally said. You're all I have left of your mother, all I have that's good and pure and... I'm not pure, Father. I'm human, flawed and curious and full of wants I don't understand. Eleanor squeezed his hand. The sooner you accept that, the sooner we can actually be honest with each other. Samuel's eyes searched her face. What do you want, Eleanor, truly? The question was so unexpected, so genuinely seeking, that Eleanor's defenses cracked. I want to feel alive, she whispered. I want to make choices, even wrong ones. I want to discover who I am when no one's watching, when no one's judging, when there's nothing between me and the truth of myself. And these men, the Maddox brothers, they make you feel that way. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. They see possibilities in me I didn't know existed. They don't want me to be smaller or quieter or more proper. They want me... Her voice caught. They want me to be more. Samuel closed his eyes. I'm losing you. No, you're letting me grow up. There's a difference. It feels the same from where I'm sitting. I know. Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder like she had when she was small. I know, Father. They sat that way, as darkness fell, two people who loved each other trying to figure out how to do it without destroying each other in the process. Sunday morning arrived bright and merciless. The church was finished enough for services, no windows yet, no proper doors but 4 walls and a roof, and enough benches for the town to gather. They came. Eleanor watched them file in, curious and skeptical, and dressed in whatever they considered respectable. Ranch hands in clean shirts, saloon girls in modest dresses, Mrs. Chen in silk that had seen better days but still carried quiet dignity. The Maddox twins came last, both in dark suits that made them look even larger, even more imposing. They nodded at Samuel, then found seats in the back. Samuel stood at the front, looking small and uncertain, and deeply human. He opened his mouth to speak, closed it, opened it again. I came here to save you, he finally said. To bring civilization and God and proper Christian values to the frontier. To build a church and fill it with righteous people, living righteous lives. The congregation shifted, uncertain where this was going. But I don't think that's what you need. Samuel continued. I think you need what we all need: grace, compassion, the understanding that we're all lost, all struggling, all trying to figure out how to be good in a world that makes being good nearly impossible. Eleanor's breath caught. He was doing it, actually doing it. I prepared a sermon about marriage, Samuel said, about sanctity and rules and one right way to love. But standing here looking at your faces, I realize that's not my message to deliver. Because I don't know your lives. I don't know your struggles. I don't know what survival cost you. He paused, gathering courage. What I do know is this: God is bigger than my understanding. Love is more complicated than my rules. And grace, real grace, means accepting that there are paths to goodness. I'll never walk choices. I'll never face arrangements. I'll never understand, but have no right to judge. The silence was profound. Cole and Cade were both staring at Samuel with something like respect. So instead of preaching at you, Samuel said softly, I'm going to ask you to teach me. Teach me about frontier life, about what makes a community strong, about how love works when society's rules don't reach this far. His voice shook. Teach me how to be a minister to people instead of an enforcer of doctrine. He sat down. No one moved. Then slowly a woman in the front row stood. Eleanor recognized her, one of the saloon girls, probably in her 30s, with tired eyes and capable hands. "My name's Ruth," she said. "I work at the Silver Dollar. Been doing it for 8 years since my husband died and left me with 2 children to feed. Church folks back in St. Louis said I was damned. Said I was choosing sin over virtue." Her voice hardened. "But they didn't offer to feed my children. Didn't offer me any work a woman could do that paid enough to survive. So I did what I had to do." She looked at Samuel directly. "You telling me God damns me for keeping my children alive?" Samuel's face was pale. "No. I'm telling you that any God worth worshiping understands survival, understands sacrifice, understands that judging someone who's never faced your choices is cruelty, not righteousness." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. She sat down hard. Another person stood, a ranch hand, young, nervous. "My brother and me, we share everything. Wages, work a small cabin on the Maddox ranch. Town thinks we're just brothers being practical. Truth is," he swallowed hard, "truth is, we're more than brothers. We're together. The way a man and woman are together." Gasps rippled through the congregation. The young man's face flushed red, but he kept going. "I know what the Bible says, know what I'm supposed to be. But I can't change what I am, and I won't apologize for loving someone good and kind and loyal." His voice broke. "So if that's sin, then I'm a sinner. But I'm a happy one, and I treat people fair, and I work hard. That count for nothing." Samuel stood slowly, walked to the young man. For a moment, Eleanor thought her father might condemn him, might fall back on scripture and certainty. Instead, Samuel embraced him. "It counts for everything," Samuel said, voice thick. "And anyone who tells you different doesn't understand the God I serve." The young man sobbed against Samuel's shoulder. Half the congregation was crying now, including Eleanor. One by one, people stood, shared their stories, their secrets, their survival. The church became a confessional, but instead of penance, Samuel offered grace, awkward, uncertain grace, from a man learning in real time how to minister to actual humans instead of idealized souls. When it was over, when the last person had spoken and the tears had dried and the congregation filed out into harsh sunlight, Samuel stood alone at the front, looking drained and humbled, and somehow more solid than before. Eleanor approached him slowly. "Father." He turned. "Did I do right?" "You did brave," Eleanor said. "That's better than right." "I didn't know," he whispered, "about any of it. About what people carry, what they survive, how cruel my certainty must have seemed. You know now. That's what matters." Samuel pulled her into a hug, holding tight. "You're so much stronger than me." "No, I'm just younger and have less to unlearn." They stood that way until Mrs. Chen appeared with food, insisting everyone eat normalcy, slowly returning. But everything had changed. Eleanor could feel it in the air, in the way people looked at Samuel, not with fear of judgment, but with tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, church could be a place that made life better instead of harder. The Maddox twins approached as the crowd thinned. Cole's expression was unreadable. Cade looked thoughtful. "Reverend," Cade said quietly. "That took guts." Samuel managed a weak smile. "That took terror, and your prompting." "Our argument, you mean?" "Your truth." Samuel glanced at Eleanor, then back at the twins. "I owe you an apology, both of you. I judged without understanding, condemned without knowing. That's not ministry, that's tyranny." "Water under the bridge," Cole said. "No," Samuel's voice firmed. "It's not. I accused you of corrupting my daughter when the truth is you've shown both of us what frontier life really demands. That's not corruption. That's education." Cade's eyes flicked to Eleanor. "Your daughter educated herself, Reverend. We just didn't stand in her way." "Perhaps that's the lesson," Samuel said quietly. "Not standing in the way of people becoming who they're meant to be." He walked away, leaving Eleanor alone with the twins. "Well," Cole said after a moment. That was unexpected. He's trying, Eleanor said. That's more than most men would do. He's a better man than we gave him credit for, Cade agreed. Still doesn't solve our problem, though. Eleanor's pulse jumped. What problem? The one where we both want you, and you can't have both of us. Cole's voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were intense. The one where you're going to have to choose eventually, and someone's going to get hurt no matter what. Unless she chooses neither, Cade said. That's an option too. Is it? Eleanor looked between them. You'd accept that you'd both just walk away. If that's what you want, Cade said steadily. Yes. Speak for yourself, Cole muttered. I don't walk away from things I want. Cole. No. Cole stepped closer to Eleanor, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I'm done pretending this isn't what it is. I want you. Cade wants you. You want something. Maybe both of us, maybe neither. Maybe you're still figuring it out. But hiding from it doesn't make it go away. What do you suggest then? Eleanor's voice came out breathless. That I just what? Pick one of you like choosing a horse, break the other's heart. Live with that choice forever. Or, Cole said slowly, you stop thinking in terms of choosing. Stop accepting that the only options are their options. Cole, don't, Cade warned. Why not? She deserves to know all the possibilities. There are no other possibilities. Society doesn't... Fuck society, Cole said flatly. We're 100 miles from anywhere that matters. No law, but what we make. No rules, but what we accept. If we wanted, if all three of us wanted... Stop. Cade's voice cut like a blade. You're going to destroy her reputation. Destroy her. Only if she lets other people define her. Cole's eyes never left Eleanor's face. You don't strike me as the type who lets other people do her thinking. Eleanor's head spun. Was he actually suggesting, could he actually mean, you're talking about scandal? She managed. About being ruined. I'm talking about being happy, Cole countered. About three people who fit together finding a way to make it work despite what anyone else thinks. It's impossible, Eleanor whispered. So was coming west. So was standing up to your father. So was making grown men back down when they were ready to fight. Cole's hand reached out this time, actually touching her cheek. You do impossible things, Eleanor. Why not one more? Eleanor looked at Cade, desperate for the voice of reason. Tell him he's crazy. Cade's gray eyes were storm dark. He is crazy, but he's not wrong. The world tilted. You can't both be serious. We're not, Cade said quietly. I'm terrified. But Cole's right about one thing: you deserve to know all your choices before you make them. Even the ones that break every rule we grew up with. Eleanor's breath came in short gasps. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what they were offering, what they were suggesting. 3 people. 2 men and 1 woman. A life built on something other than convention. I need to think. Then think, Cole said gently. We're not going anywhere. But Eleanor was. She turned and walked away fast, then faster, then running until she reached the boarding house and collapsed on her bed, heart hammering, mind reeling. Maybe she's meant for both of us. The words that had haunted her for days suddenly weren't just words. They were an offer, a possibility, a door opening onto something terrifying and exhilarating and completely unknown. Eleanor pressed her face into her pillow and tried to breathe through the panic and want and fear all tangled together in her chest. She'd come west to feel alive. Well, she certainly felt that now. Eleanor didn't leave her room for 2 days. Mrs. Chen brought food that went mostly uneaten. Her father knocked twice, received muffled assurances that she was fine, and retreated with the helpless confusion of a man who'd never understood the female heart, even when it belonged to his own daughter. The twins didn't come, didn't knock, didn't call, didn't send messages. Their absence was somehow louder than their presence had been. On the third morning, Mrs. Chen didn't knock. She simply walked in, set down a tray, and crossed her arms. "You done hiding?" Eleanor looked up from the bed where she'd been staring at the ceiling for what felt like hours. "I'm not hiding. You lying in bed in middle of day, haven't washed, haven't eaten, look like ghost. That hiding." Mrs. Chen sat on the edge of the bed uninvited. "Question is, what you hiding from them, or yourself?" "Both. Neither. I don't know." "That honest at least." Mrs. Chen poured tea from the pot on the tray, handed Eleanor a cup. "Drink, then talk." Eleanor obeyed. The tea was strong and bitter, and exactly what she needed. "They offered me something impossible," Eleanor said finally. "Love usually impossible until it not." Mrs. Chen sipped her own tea. "What kind of impossible they offer?" "The kind where I don't have to choose between them. We're all three of us." Eleanor couldn't finish. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. "Ah, that kind." "You're not shocked?" "I'm Chinese woman running business alone in frontier town. I see many things shock other people. This not one of them." Mrs. Chen set down her cup. "You think you first woman in world to love two men? Or first two men to love same woman?" "I don't love them. I barely know them." "You know them enough to stay in bed 3 days thinking about offer. That's something." Mrs. Chen's eyes were shrewd. "What scare you most, that they suggesting it, or that you considering it?" Eleanor's hands trembled on the cup. "If I say yes, if I even think about saying yes, I become everything my father preached against. Everything Boston society called fallen women. I become a scandal, a cautionary tale, a woman who choose her own life instead of life chosen for her." Mrs. Chen interrupted. "You see scandal. I see courage." "Courage, it's madness." "Same thing sometimes." Mrs. Chen stood gathering the tray. "My grandmother had 2 husbands in China. Not one die, then second one. Both at same time. Not hiding, not secret. Family arrangement. 3 of them together raise children, run business lifelong happy life. She tell me before she die happiest years of her life." Eleanor stared. "That's different. That was family arrangement cultural. That was 3 people deciding rules not work for them and making new rules." Mrs. Chen headed for the door, paused. "You think you special? Think you only one who ever want something society say wrong? Every woman who ever have baby out of marriage, every man who ever love another man, every person who ever look at life and say, no, I want different, they all face what you facing. Question not what people think. Question is what you know." "I don't know anything anymore." "Yes, you do. You just scared to admit it." Mrs. Chen opened the door. "Maddox brothers, they out at ranch. Been there 3 days. Giving you space. But they not wait forever. Men like that, they need answer eventually. Even if answer is no." She left. Eleanor sat holding her cold tea, mind spinning. She thought about her father's sermon, about grace and compassion, and accepting that there were paths to goodness he'd never walk. Had he meant it? Or had it just been words spoken in a moment of humility that he'd retract once he faced actual consequences? She thought about Ruth, the saloon girl feeding her children the only way society allowed. About the young ranch hand who loved his brother. About all the people who stood in that church and confessed their survival, their choices, their refusal to die for the sake of propriety. She thought about Cole's hand on her face, Cade's eyes seeing through to her core, the way they moved together like 2 halves of one dangerous whole. And she thought about herself. About the Eleanor who'd stepped off that wagon weeks ago proper and scared and so certain she knew who she was. That Eleanor was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, more honest. Someone who wanted things she'd been taught not to want. Someone who was tired of pretending otherwise. Eleanor set down the cup, stood, and started getting dressed. Real clothes, not the nightgown she'd been wearing. She washed her face, pinned her hair, looked at herself in the small mirror. "Well," she said to her reflection, "what are you going to do?" Her reflection didn't answer. But Eleanor knew anyway. She found her father in the church sweeping. He looked up when she entered, relief flooding his face. "Eleanor, are you all right? I need to tell you something." Samuel set down the broom immediately. "Of course. Anything." Eleanor took a breath. "I'm going to the Maddox ranch." "Oh, well, I suppose they've been helpful with the church. You should thank them." "I'm going because they asked me to come. Because we need to have a conversation about—" She stopped, choosing words carefully. "About my future. And theirs." Samuel went very still. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind I need to have without you there. The kind where I decide what my life looks like going forward." "Eleanor." Samuel's voice shook. "Please tell me that they haven't. They've been nothing but honest with me. More honest than anyone else in my life has ever been." Eleanor met her father's eyes. "I don't know what I'm going to decide. But I need to decide it myself, without your influence, without your fear, without your version of God telling me what I should want." "But surely—" "No." Eleanor's voice was gentle but absolute. "This is mine, Father. My choice. My life. You gave that sermon about grace and accepting paths you don't understand. Did you mean it? Or was it just performance?" Samuel's face crumpled. "I meant it. But Eleanor, your eternal soul is between me and whatever God I answer to, not between me and your interpretation of Scripture." Eleanor crossed to him, took his hands. "I love you, but I won't let you make my choices out of fear. I'm your father. Protecting you is my... Protecting me was your job when I was a child. Now your job is trusting me." Eleanor squeezed his hands. "Can you do that?" Samuel looked at his daughter, really looked maybe for the first time since they'd arrived in Coyote Ridge. What he saw made him close his eyes in something like grief. "You're so much like your mother," he whispered. "She was fearless too. It terrified me then. It terrifies me now." "But you loved her anyway." "With everything I had." Samuel opened his eyes. Tears tracked down his cheeks. "And I love you the same way. Especially when you scare me half to death." "Then trust me to know my own heart." "What if your heart is wrong?" "Then I'll learn from the mistake. But it will be my mistake to make." Samuel pulled her into a hug, holding tight. "When did you become so wise?" "When I stopped pretending I was something I'm not." They stood that way for a long moment. Then Samuel pulled back, wiping his eyes. "Go," he said roughly. "Before I change my mind and try to lock you in your room like a medieval father." Eleanor almost smiled. "You'd never." "No, but the temptation is strong." He touched her face. "Be careful, please." "I will." "And Eleanor, whatever you decide." His voice caught. "You'll always be my daughter. Always be welcome at my table. Even if I don't understand your choice." Eleanor's own eyes filled. "Thank you, Father." She left before she could lose her nerve. Pike was loading supplies into a wagon outside the general store. He took one look at her face and sighed. Maddox Ranch. "How did you been driving folks around here long enough to recognize that look? Woman on a mission." He gestured to the wagon bed. "Climb in, I'm headed that way anyway." The ride took an hour. Pike didn't try to make conversation, for which Eleanor was grateful. Her mind was too full of rehearsed speeches and imagined scenarios, and the growing certainty that no amount of preparation would make this easier. The M Ranch appeared gradually, first fencing, then cattle, then buildings that grew from the earth like they'd always been there. It was massive, sprawling, obviously prosperous. The main house was solid timber and stone built for permanence rather than show. Pike pulled up in front. "Want me to wait?" "No, I'll find my own way back." If you say so. He tipped his hat. Good luck, Miss Hartwell. I think you're gonna need it. He drove off, leaving Eleanor standing in the dust, looking at the house where the Maddox twins lived. Before she could knock, the door opened. Cole stood there, surprise flickering across his face, before being replaced by something more guarded. Eleanor. I need to talk to both of you. Yeah, we figured. He stepped back. Come in. The inside was cleaner than she'd expected, sparse furniture, practical rather than decorative, but well-maintained. Cade appeared from another room, wiping his hands on a cloth. Miss Hartwell. His voice was carefully neutral. This is unexpected. Is it? Eleanor's pulse hammered, but she kept her voice steady. You made me an offer. I came to discuss it. The twins exchanged a glance. Cole gestured to a worn sofa. Sit, please. Eleanor sat. The twins remained standing, which gave them the advantage of height but also made them look nervous. Good. She wasn't the only one off balance here. Before you say anything, Cade started. We need you to know what Cole suggested. It was impulsive. Heat of the moment. We don't expect... Stop. Eleanor held up a hand. Don't take it back. Don't make it smaller than it was. You offered me a choice. The least you can do is have the courage to stand by it. Silence. Then Cole laughed short, surprised. You're something else, you know that... I've been told. Eleanor folded her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. I've spent 3 days thinking about what you said. About possibilities. About rules and who makes them and why we follow them. And... Cade's voice was tight. And I have questions. Before I even consider, before I decide anything, I need to understand what you're actually proposing. Cole sat on the arm of a chair, studying her. You want the practical details of how this would work. I want to know if you've thought past the romantic notion of having what you want. Because I'm not some toy you can share when the mood strikes. I'm a person, with needs and expectations, and the requirement that I be treated with respect, not as a convenience. We know that, Cade said quietly. We wouldn't have suggested anything if we thought otherwise. Then tell me. Eleanor looked between them. How would this work? Would I live here? Would we hide it or be open? Would I be expected to service both of you? Take turns. How do you imagine this playing out? The bluntness of her questions hung in the air. Cole's mouth quirked. Cade looked uncomfortable, but didn't shy away. We haven't figured all that out, Cole admitted. Because we didn't think you'd actually consider it. But you must have imagined something. Men don't make offers like this without some fantasy of how it would go. Fair enough. Cole leaned forward. Here's what I imagined. You'd live here. With us. Not as some kept woman or mistress or whatever polite society calls it. As... He struggled for the word. As ours. And we'd be yours. A partnership. 3 people building a life together. And the physical aspect would be whatever makes all of us comfortable, Cade said firmly. We're not animals, Eleanor. We wouldn't demand or expect or force anything. What happens between us, all of us, would happen because everyone wants it. Clearly, enthusiastically wants it. Eleanor's face heated, but she pushed on. And jealousy. You're brothers, but you're also individuals. What happens when one of you wants time alone with me, when feelings get complicated? They'll get complicated regardless, Cole said. That's not unique to this situation. Any relationship requires navigation and honesty and willingness to deal with difficult feelings. But this is different. This is 3 people instead of 2, Cade interrupted. Which means 3 perspectives, 3 sets of needs. 3 people who have to communicate and compromise and choose each other every day. Is it harder? Maybe, but it's also... He stopped. Also what? More, Cole finished for him. More support, more love, more hands to build a life with, more strength when things get hard. Eleanor stood abruptly, needing to move. You're describing something beautiful, something almost utopian. But what about reality? What about the town, my father? The fact that this would destroy my reputation completely. Your reputation, in whose eyes? Cole stood too. The society you left behind, the Boston ladies who never approved of you anyway, or the people here. The ones who stood in that church and confessed their own survival, their own choices that broke all the rules. That's not the same. Isn't it? Cade's voice was soft. Ruth, the saloon girl, the young ranch hand who loves his brother. Mrs. Chen running a business alone. They're all living lives society says are wrong. But they're surviving. More than surviving. Finding happiness in the cracks between what's allowed and what's real. Eleanor pressed her hands to her face. This is insane. Probably, Cole agreed. But so is everything worth doing. My father gave a sermon about grace 3 days ago, Cade reminded her. About accepting paths he doesn't understand. Maybe it's time to see if he meant it. And if he didn't, if this breaks him, then that's his choice, Cole said flatly. Not yours. You can't live your life trying to protect his feelings. That's not love, Eleanor. That's sacrifice. And sacrifice without willing heart becomes resentment. Eleanor dropped her hands, looked at both of them. You've really thought about this. We've thought about nothing but this for 3 days, Cade said. While you were hiding in your room, we were out here trying to figure out if we were insane for wanting this, or if maybe, just maybe, there's a way to make it work. And what did you conclude? The twins looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. We concluded that we want you, Cole said simply. Both of us. And we're not going to fight each other for you, because that destroys what we are brothers, partners, two halves of the same whole. So either we find a way to love you together, or we step back and let you go. Those are the only options that don't tear us apart. And if I can't do this? Eleanor's voice shook. If it's too much, too strange, too far outside what I can accept, then we'll accept that, Cade said. And we'll still be your friends, still support the church, still protect you if you need protecting. This offer doesn't come with punishment if you refuse it. Eleanor walked to the window, looked out at the vast ranch spreading in all directions. So much space, so much possibility. I need time, she said finally. I need to process this, to figure out what I actually want versus what I've been taught to want. How much time? Cole's voice held no pressure, just genuine curiosity. I don't know. Days, weeks, I can't put a number on it. Then don't. Cade came to stand beside her close but not touching. Take whatever time you need. We're not going anywhere. Eleanor turned to look at him, at both of them. At these two impossible men who'd somehow gotten under her skin, into her head, tangled up in her heart. Why me? She asked suddenly. You could have any woman in this territory. Why choose the one who brings the most complications? Cole's laugh was soft. Because the complications are what make you worth having. Because you don't bow or scrape or pretend to be less than you are. Because when you look at us, you see men flawed, dangerous, imperfect men, and you don't flinch. And because, Cade added quietly, you make us want to be better, not different better. That's rare, Eleanor. That's worth fighting for. Eleanor's throat tightened. I should go. Stay for dinner at least, Cole said. It's a long walk back to town. I don't think... Please. The word was simple, unadorned. Just dinner. No pressure. No expectations. Just 3 people sharing a meal. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. Just dinner. Dinner turned into an evening that stretched long and easy. The twins cooked actual cooking, not just throwing meat on a fire, and the conversation flowed naturally. They asked about her life in Boston. She asked about building the ranch. They told stories about the frontier that made her laugh and gasp, and shake her head in disbelief. It felt normal, comfortable, like three friends who'd known each other for years instead of weeks. It felt dangerous in its normalcy. When full dark fell, Cole hitched up a wagon to drive her back. Cade came along sitting in the back while Eleanor sat up front with Cole. The ride was quiet. Stars spread overhead in impossible numbers, and the night air carried the scent of sage and dust and something wild. "Thank you," Eleanor said as they approached town. "For dinner. For everything today." "Thank you for coming," Cade said from behind her. "For hearing us out instead of just running." "I still might run." "That's your right," Cole said easily. "But at least now you'll be running from the truth instead of assumptions." He pulled up in front of the boarding house. Both twins climbed down and helped her from the wagon with a courtesy that felt both old-fashioned and genuinely caring. "Eleanor," Cade said as she turned to go, "one more thing." She looked back. "Whatever you decide, choose it because it's what you want. Not because it's what we want, or what your father wants, or what society expects. Choose it because when you're old and looking back at your life, you can say you lived honestly." Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. She went inside and climbed the stairs to her room. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed. Well, what? You go to ranch, you come back. What happened?" Eleanor sank onto her bed. "They want me to take time, to figure out what I actually want." "Smart men." Mrs. Chen sat beside her. "And what you figure out so far?" "That I'm terrified and exhilarated, and so far outside my understanding of who I'm supposed to be that I can't find my way back, even if I wanted to." "Good. That mean you growing?" Mrs. Chen patted her hand. "Fear and excitement, they cousins. Both mean you alive and moving forward. Only dangerous thing is standing still." Eleanor looked at the older woman. "Did you ever have to make a choice this big?" "Every day. Choose to stay after husband die. Choose to keep business when town want me gone. Choose to keep living when living feel too hard." Mrs. Chen's eyes were distant. "Big choices not happen once, happen every day. You choose, then choose again, then keep choosing until choice become life. What if I choose wrong? What if you choose right and too scared to see it?" Mrs. Chen stood. "Sleep. Tomorrow more choices. Always more choices." She left. Eleanor lay back on the bed, still dressed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Cole's hands moving confidently while he cooked. About Cade's quiet laugh when she said something he found genuinely funny. About how easy it had been to sit between them and feel not pulled in two directions, but held by two different kinds of strength. She thought about her father's sermon. About grace and paths he didn't understand. About whether love could really be bigger than the rules people made to contain it. She thought about Ruth feeding her children. About the young ranch hand who loved his brother. About Mrs. Chen surviving alone. About all the ways people carved out lives in the cracks between what was allowed and what was necessary. And she thought about herself. About Eleanor Hartwell, who'd left Boston to feel alive and was now faced with the most alive choice she'd ever had to make. The question wasn't whether she could do this. The question was whether she was brave enough to try. Days passed. Eleanor helped with the church, which was becoming more community hall than house of worship, exactly as she'd suggested. Her father preached on Sundays about grace and compassion, and people kept coming, not many, but steady. A foundation being built. The twins came to town for supplies but didn't seek her out. Gave her space. Nodded when they passed her on the street, but didn't push, didn't pressure, didn't make her feel rushed. It should have made the decision easier. Instead, it made it harder. Because every time she saw them separate, going about their business, living their lives, she felt the absence of something she'd only just started to imagine. 2 weeks after her visit to the ranch, Eleanor was helping Mrs. Chen prepare bread when shouting erupted outside. She ran to the door and saw smoke rising from the direction of the church. Fire. She didn't think. Just ran, gathering her skirts, heart pounding. Others were running too. Men with buckets, women with wet blankets, everyone converging on the building that had become the heart of their fragile community. The fire was small, contained to one corner. Someone had caught it early. But Eleanor's father was inside, trying to save the wooden cross he'd carved himself, coughing on smoke, stumbling. She screamed his name, started forward. Strong hands grabbed her waist, pulled her back. "Let me go. You'll die in there." Cade's voice rough with smoke and fear. "My father." "I've got him." Cole was already moving, covering his face with his shirt disappearing into the smoke. Eleanor fought against Cade's hold. "Let me." "No." Cade's arms were iron. "I won't lose you too." The words hung between them. Too. Like she was already his to lose. Cole emerged, carrying Samuel, both of them coughing, faces streaked with soot. Men with buckets doused the flames. The fire died under determined effort, leaving a blackened corner, but most of the structure intact. Samuel collapsed on the ground, gasping. Eleanor broke free and ran to him. "Father, Father, are you?" "Fine." His voice was a rasp. "Just couldn't let it burn. Couldn't." "The cross isn't worth your life." Eleanor's voice broke. "Nothing is worth your life." Samuel looked at her, then past her at Cole and Cade standing together watching. "Some things are," he said quietly. "Some things are worth any risk." Eleanor helped him stand. The townspeople were already assessing damage, talking about repairs, organizing. Crisis bringing people together the way crisis always did. But Eleanor couldn't stop shaking. Couldn't stop seeing her father disappearing into smoke. Couldn't stop feeling Cade's arms around her, holding her back from danger. "I won't lose you too." Like she was already his. Like the decision had already been made. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't confusion keeping her awake. It was clarity. She'd spent 2 weeks trying to logic her way to a decision. Trying to weigh pros and cons, calculate social costs, predict outcomes. But life didn't work that way. Life was her father running into fire for a wooden cross. Life was Cole following without hesitation. Life was Cade's arms keeping her safe, even as his brother risked everything. Life was choosing before you were ready and hoping courage carried you through. Eleanor got out of bed, dressed quickly, and slipped outside. The night was clear and cold. She walked to the church, to the blackened corner that smelled of smoke and survival. She stood there looking at the damage, thinking about rebuilding. About how fire didn't destroy, it just changed things, made them different, sometimes made them stronger. "Can't sleep either." She turned. Cade stood at the church entrance, silhouetted against moonlight. "Where's Cole?" "Checking the ranch perimeter. Thinks the fire might have been set deliberately. Wants to make sure there's no other trouble coming." Cade walked toward her slowly. "You okay?" "No, yes, I don't know." Eleanor laughed shakily. "I thought I was figuring things out. Then today happened and I realized I'm tired of figuring. I'm tired of trying to predict every consequence. I'm tired of being careful." Cade stopped a few feet away. "What are you saying?" Eleanor looked at him. At this man who'd held her back from danger. Who'd looked at her father with respect despite their arguments. Who'd offered her impossible things and then given her space to decide. "I'm saying I want to try," she whispered. "I want to see if 3 people can build something good together. I want to stop living by other people's rules and start living by our own." Cade's expression didn't change for a long moment. Then his breath left him in a rush. "You're sure?" "I'm terrified. But yes, I'm sure. Your father will have to accept it or not. That's his choice." Eleanor stepped closer. "You said grace means accepting paths you don't understand. Time to find out if he meant it." Cade closed the remaining distance between them. His hand came up, cupped her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so large. "We'll take care of you," he said quietly. "Both of us, I swear it." "I don't need taking care of. I need partners, equals, people who see me as capable of making my own choices." even when those choices are reckless and terrifying, especially then. Cade's almost smile became real. Then we're going to get along just fine, Eleanor Hartwell. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. His lips touched hers, soft, questioning, achingly gentle. Eleanor's first kiss tasted like smoke and courage, and the beginning of something she couldn't name, but knew she wanted. When they pulled apart, Cade rested his forehead against hers. Cole's going to lose his mind when he finds out you said yes. Then let's go tell him. Now it's the middle of the night. I've spent enough time being careful. Let's be reckless instead. Cade laughed a real laugh, surprised and delighted. You're going to turn our lives upside down, aren't you? Eleanor smiled. That's the plan. They walked toward the ranch together under a sky full of stars that didn't care about scandal or society or who loved whom or how. And Eleanor felt for the first time since leaving Boston like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Doing exactly what she was meant to do, choosing exactly who she was meant to become. Cole was in the barn checking saddles when they arrived. He looked up at the sound of footsteps, saw Cade, then saw Eleanor, and went completely still. It's past midnight, he said slowly. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Cade's voice carried something Cole had never heard before, pure, uncomplicated joy. Eleanor has something to tell you. Cole's eyes locked on Eleanor's face. She saw the exact moment he understood, saw hope flare so bright it was almost painful to witness. Say it, he said roughly. I need to hear you say it. Eleanor's heart hammered, but her voice came steady. I want to try. All three of us. Together. Cole closed the distance between them in 3 strides and kissed her before she could take another breath. Where Cade had been gentle, Cole was fire urgent and demanding, and so full of want that Eleanor's knees went weak. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious and breakable, despite the fierceness of his mouth on hers. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. You're sure? His voice shook. Because, if you're not, if this is just, I'm sure. Eleanor grabbed his shirt to steady herself. Terrified, but sure. Cole laughed and kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. Then he pulled back and looked at his brother over Eleanor's head. We're really doing this. Looks that way. Cade's voice was warm with affection and something deeper relief, maybe, that they weren't being torn apart after all. Your father's going to kill us, Cole said. He's going to try to save my soul, Eleanor corrected. There's a difference. Not much of one from where I'm standing. But Cole was grinning, wild and delighted. God, Eleanor, you have any idea what you're getting into? Not even a little. Eleanor looked between them, these two impossible men who somehow fit together like pieces she hadn't known were missing. But I'm done trying to predict everything, done trying to be safe and proper and small. You were never small, Cade said quietly. You just didn't know how big you could be yet. The words settled into Eleanor's chest like truth. She'd spent 22 years being shaped by other people's expectations. Her father's dreams, society's rules, the careful boundaries of what a good girl should want. But standing here between these two men who saw her as she actually was, she felt enormous, powerful, free. So what happens now? She asked. The twins exchanged a glance. Cole spoke first. Now we figure out how this works. Practical things. Where you'll live, what we tell people, how to handle your father. And the fact that someone tried to burn down the church tonight, Cade added grimly. Fire wasn't an accident, Eleanor. Someone set it deliberately. The reminder hit like cold water. Eleanor had been so focused on her own turmoil, she'd almost forgotten the danger. Who would do that? Could be the townsman who confronted you at the construction site, Cole said. Could be someone who doesn't want a church here. Could be someone who doesn't like the Maddox brothers gaining more influence in town. He ran a hand through his hair. Too many possibilities. But until we know you're not safe in town. I'm not running away. Not running, Cade interrupted. Staying here, with us, where we can protect you. Eleanor opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. They weren't trying to control her, they were genuinely worried, and maybe they had reason to be. My father will never allow it. Your father doesn't get a vote, Cole said flatly. You're a grown woman making grown choices. He can accept it or not, but he doesn't get to stop you. He'll think you've kidnapped me, corrupted me. Then we'll explain, Cade said. Together, tomorrow. Tonight, you're staying here. The finality in his voice should have rankled. Instead, it settled something anxious in Eleanor's chest. For years, she'd carried the weight of her father's expectations, his dreams, his fears. The idea of putting that down, even temporarily, felt like breathing after being underwater. All right, she said. I'll stay tonight. Tomorrow we talk to Samuel. Fair enough. Cole headed toward the barn door. I'll get the guest room ready. No. Both twins turned to look at her. Eleanor felt heat crawl up her neck, but held her ground. If we're doing this, really doing this, then I don't want to start by hiding. I don't want separate rooms and careful distance and pretending we're something we're not. She took a breath. I want to be with both of you, tonight, now. Before I lose my nerve or reality catches up, or any of the 1,000 things that could go wrong actually do. Silence. Cole and Cade stared at her like she'd just announced she could fly. Eleanor, Cade said carefully, you don't have to, we're not expecting. I know, but I'm expecting it of myself. Eleanor's voice shook, but held. I've spent my whole life being careful, being proper, saving myself for some hypothetical future husband who would probably bore me to tears. I'm done with that. I want this. I want you, both of you, and I want to stop being afraid of wanting. Cole made a sound low in his throat. You're going to destroy us, aren't you? That's the plan, Eleanor said, echoing her words from earlier. Cade crossed to her, slowly giving her every chance to change her mind. He touched her face gently. You've never... No, but neither have you done this. Not with... She gestured between the three of them. We're all figuring this out together. That's different. We've... Cade stopped, seeming to realize there was no delicate way to finish that sentence. You've been with women before, Eleanor finished for him. I know. I'm not naive enough to think otherwise. But this is new for all of us. So maybe we just start, and figure it out as we go. Cole moved to her other side. You're sure? Because once there's no going back from this, Eleanor. Your father will know. The town will eventually know. You'll be ruined by every measure that mattered in Boston. Good, Eleanor said fiercely. Let me be ruined. I'd rather be ruined and alive than proper and dead inside. The twins looked at each other over her head. Some silent conversation happened in the space of a heartbeat. Then Cade took her hand. Then come with us, he said quietly, and let us show you what being alive actually means. They led her to the main house through rooms Eleanor barely registered to a bedroom that was simple and clean and smelled of sage and leather. Cole lit a lamp while Cade closed the door. Eleanor's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. This was happening. Actually happening. She was about to give herself to two men together in defiance of every rule she'd ever been taught. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like freedom. Hey. Cole stepped close, tipped her chin up with gentle fingers. You're shaking. I'm nervous. Good. Means you're smart. His thumb brushed her lower lip. But you don't have to be scared. Not of us. Never of us. I'm not scared of you. I'm scared of... Eleanor stopped trying to find words. Of being bad at this. Of disappointing you. Of not knowing what I'm doing. Eleanor. Cade's voice came from behind her, warm and solid. There is no wrong way to do this. No performance you have to give. It's just us. 3 people who want each other. Everything else is just details." "Details seem important," Eleanor said shakily. "They're not." Cole's hands moved to the buttons of her dress. "Can I?" Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. Cole undid the buttons with surprising dexterity, while Cade pulled the pins from her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. The dress pooled at her feet, leaving her in her shift and corset. "Breathe," Cade said softly, his hands moving to unlace the corset. "Just breathe." Eleanor obeyed. The corset loosened, fell away. The shift was thin cotton, nearly transparent in the lamplight. She felt exposed and powerful and desperately uncertain all at once. Cole's hand touched her shoulder, slid down her arm, left trails of heat in its wake. "You're beautiful." "You can't even see me properly yet?" "Don't need to. I've been seeing you since the day you stepped off that wagon, all fire and fear and too stubborn to back down." His lips brushed her temple. "That's what beautiful looks like." Cade's hand settled on her waist from behind, solid and grounding. "We're going to take care of you. Both of us. I promise." "I don't need." Eleanor started, but Cade turned her gently to face him. "I know you don't need taking care of. But let us anyway. Let us make you feel good. Let us show you that wanting isn't something to be ashamed of." He kissed her, then slow and deep and thorough, like they had all the time in the world. Eleanor melted into it, into him, into the feeling of being wanted, without shame or hesitation. Cole's hands moved over her from behind, learning the shape of her through thin cotton, his touch reverent and hungry at once. Eleanor gasped against Cade's mouth and felt him smile. "Good," Cade murmured. "Yes. God, yes. Then let us keep going." What followed was a slow unraveling of every careful boundary Eleanor had ever built. Cole and Cade moved around her and with each other in perfect synchronization, one steadying, while the other explored, one gentle, while the other urgent, always somehow knowing exactly what she needed before she did. They learned her body like it was a language they were determined to master. They showed her pleasure she hadn't known existed. They made her feel cherished and desired and powerful all at once. And when it was over, when all 3 of them lay tangled together in sheets that smelled of sweat and satisfaction, Eleanor felt fundamentally changed. Not ruined, not corrupted, just more. More herself than she'd ever been. More alive, more honest. "You okay?" Cole's voice was rough with exhaustion and contentment. "Better than okay." Eleanor's own voice was barely a whisper. I don't have words for what I am." "Happy, I hope," Cade said quietly, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Terrified and exhilarated and completely out of my depth," Eleanor admitted. "But yes, happy." "Good." Cole kissed her shoulder. "That's good." They fell asleep that way, 3 people who'd chosen each other against all logic and convention, finding peace in the warmth of shared breath and tangled limbs. Eleanor's last thought before sleep claimed her was that her father's sermon about grace was about to be tested in ways he never imagined. Morning came too fast. Eleanor woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the warm weight of 2 bodies pressed against her. Cole on one side, Cade on the other, both still sleeping. Reality crashed in like a wave. What had felt inevitable and right in darkness felt impossible in daylight. She'd slept with 2 men, given herself to both of them, crossed a line that society insisted could never be uncrossed. Eleanor carefully extracted herself from the bed, trying not to wake them. She found her shift, pulled it on, and stood at the window looking out at the ranch spreading toward the horizon. Second thoughts. She turned. Cade was awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with those storm-gray eyes. 1,000 of them, Eleanor admitted, but that doesn't change what I want. Just makes me aware of what it costs. Regret? No. Fear. She wrapped her arms around herself. I have to tell my father today, and he's going to God, Cade. He's going to think you've destroyed me. Have we? The question was serious, seeking real answer. Eleanor considered, then shook her head. No. I think you've helped me find parts of myself I was taught to bury. That's not destruction. That's excavation, maybe. Cade got out of bed, unselfconsciously pulled on pants, came to stand beside her. We'll go with you, to talk to him. Face it together. He'll be angrier if you're there. Probably. But you're ours now, Eleanor. We don't let you face hard things alone. The possessiveness should have grated. Instead, it felt like shelter, not a cage, but a place to stand when the world came crashing in. Cole woke soon after. They dressed in heavy silence, each preparing for the confrontation ahead. Eleanor borrowed a dress from Cole's mother's old trunk. It fit well enough, and wearing her own smoke-stained dress felt wrong somehow. The ride to town took forever, and no time at all. Pike saw them coming, and his face went carefully neutral, the expression of a man who knew scandal when he saw it, and wanted no part of the fallout. Samuel was at the church assessing fire damage with several townsmen. He looked up when Eleanor approached, relief flooding his face. Eleanor, I was worried when you weren't at the boarding house this morning. Mrs. Chen said. He stopped, seeing the twins flanking her. What's going on? Eleanor's throat went dry. No preparation made this easier. No rehearsal made the words come. Father, I need to talk to you, privately. Samuel's eyes darted between her and the Maddox brothers. Understanding dawned slowly, then all at once. His face went pale. No. Eleanor, tell me you didn't. Reverend Cade interrupted. You should hear what your daughter has to say before jumping to conclusions. Conclusions. Samuel's voice rose. She disappears all night and returns with both of you. What conclusions should I be jumping to? That I made a choice, Eleanor said firmly. My choice about my life. Your choice to throw away your virtue, your reputation, your immortal soul. Samuel's hands shook. Eleanor, what have they done to you? They've done nothing I didn't want, Eleanor said. And I won't stand here and let you treat me like a child who's been led astray. I'm a woman making decisions about her own life. By becoming their... Samuel couldn't finish. How could you? After everything I taught you. You taught me to think for myself, to question, to seek truth. Eleanor's voice broke, but she pushed on. Well, I did. And the truth is I love them, both of them, and they love me. And we're choosing each other despite every rule that says we can't. Samuel staggered backward like she'd struck him. Love, you call this love? It's perversion. It's three people trying to build something good in a world that makes being good nearly impossible. Eleanor interrupted. Sound familiar? Father? You said those words 3 weeks ago. Did you mean them or not? That was different. How? How is it different? Eleanor stepped closer. You stood in that church and offered grace to a saloon girl feeding her children to a young man loving his brother. You said accepting paths you don't understand is what ministry means. But now, when the path is mine, suddenly grace has limits. Samuel's face crumpled. You're my daughter. I'm supposed to protect you. From what? From being happy. From choosing men who see me as an equal instead of property. Eleanor's voice gentled. Father, I know this isn't what you wanted for me, but it's what I want for myself, and you have to decide if your love is big enough to accept that. The town will crucify you. You'll be ruined. Only in the eyes of people whose opinions I don't value. Eleanor glanced at the twins, drew strength from their solid presence. The people who matter, Mrs. Chen, Ruth. The others who stood in that church and confessed their survival, they'll understand. Or they won't. But either way, I'm not living my life for their approval. Samuel looked at his daughter like she was a stranger. When did you become so hard? I'm not hard. I'm honest. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. And I'm asking you to be honest too. Are you more concerned about my soul Or about what people will think of you for failing to control your daughter? The question hung in the air. Samuel's face went through a dozen emotions: anger, grief, fear, shame. Finally, he looked away. "I don't know," he whispered. "God help me, I don't know." "Then figure it out," Eleanor said, "because I'm not going to apologize for choosing life over propriety. And I won't let you make me feel ashamed for wanting things you don't understand." She turned and walked away, the twins falling into step beside her. Behind them, Samuel stood alone in the ashes of the fire, looking lost. "That went well," Cole said dryly. "He'll come around," Cade said, though he didn't sound certain. "He's a good man, just shocked." "He may never come around," Eleanor said quietly. "And I have to be okay with that." The realization settled into her bones. She might have to choose between her father's love and her own happiness, between the family she was born into and the family she was building. It was a choice that shouldn't have to exist. But it did. And Eleanor was tired of pretending otherwise. They were halfway back to the ranch when Pike caught up with them, wagon rattling. "Miss Hartwell got a problem." They turned. Pike's face was grim. "What kind of problem?" Cole's voice went hard. "The kind where half the town's talking about you three, where the other half's placing bets on how long before the Reverend runs you out, where someone painted some choice words on the boarding house wall about Eleanor." Pike spat. "It's getting ugly fast." Eleanor's stomach dropped. She'd known there would be talk. But this fast? "Who's stirring things up?" Cade demanded. "That townsman from before Jensen. He's going around saying the Maddox brothers are corrupting the preacher's daughter. Says the church fire was a warning. Says next time it'll be more than a building burning." Cole swore. Cade's jaw tightened. "He's threatening her," Cole said flatly. "He's threatening all of you," Pike corrected. "And he's got support. Not everyone, but enough to cause trouble." Eleanor felt cold despite the sun. "What do we do?" The twins looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. "We face it," Cade said finally. "Together. We go back to town. We make clear that Eleanor's under our protection. And we make clear that anyone who wants to hurt her has to go through us." "That'll make things worse," Pike warned. "Maybe. But running makes us look guilty. Makes Eleanor look like a victim instead of a woman who made a choice." Cole's eyes were hard. "I won't let her be painted as helpless. Won't let anyone think we took something that wasn't freely given." Eleanor's heart swelled. They weren't trying to hide her away, weren't treating her like a shameful secret. They were standing with her, consequences be damned. "Then let's go back," she said, "and face whatever comes." Pike shook his head. "You're all crazy, but I respect it." He gestured to the wagon. "Climb in. I'll drive you back before Jensen works everyone into a mob." They returned to town to find a crowd gathering near the church. Jensen stood at the center, red-faced and shouting, "Cannot allow this depravity the Reverend's daughter shared between two men like she's property. It's an abomination, a sin against God and decency." Several people nodded. Others looked uncertain. Ruth, the saloon girl, stood off to the side, arms crossed, expression stormy. Eleanor climbed down from the wagon, flanked by the twins. The crowd noticed. Conversation died. Jensen spotted her, and his face twisted with self-righteous fury. "There she is, the fallen woman herself. Have you no shame?" Eleanor walked toward him steadily, ignoring the whispers that followed. She stopped a few feet away and met his eyes. "I have no shame because I've done nothing shameful," she said clearly. "I've made choices about my own life and my own body. Choices that are none of your business. It's everyone's business when sin walks openly in our streets." Jensen turned to the crowd. "Are we going to allow this? Are we going to let the Maddox brothers mock everything decent and pure?" "The Maddox brothers!" Cade's voice cut through the noise like a blade. have done nothing but respect Eleanor's autonomy and agency. Unlike you, Jensen, who seems to think women are children requiring your protection and control. I'm protecting her from you. I don't need protection from them, Eleanor said. I need protection from men like you who think they have the right to dictate how I live. You're a whore, Jensen spat. A painted Jezebel who's... Cole moved so fast Eleanor didn't see it coming. One moment Jensen was standing, the next he was on the ground. Cole's hand wrapped around his throat. Say another word about her. Cole's voice was deadly quiet. And I'll break every bone in your body, slowly. Cole. Eleanor's voice cut through his fury. Let him go. He called you. I know what he called me. Let him go anyway. Cole held for another heartbeat, then released Jensen and stood. The other man scrambled backward, fear finally replacing his righteous anger. Eleanor turned to face the crowd. Her heart hammered, but her voice came steady. I know what you think of me. What you're saying. That I'm fallen, corrupted, shameful. And maybe by Boston standards you're right. But we're not in Boston. She looked around, meeting eyes, some hostile, some curious, some sympathetic. We're on the frontier, where survival matters more than propriety, where strength comes in different forms, where love, real love, is too precious to waste judging. Love. Someone in the crowd. Eleanor couldn't see who called out. You call living in sin love. I call honesty love. I call respect love. I call three people choosing each other, despite every force trying to tear them apart, love. Eleanor's voice rang out. My father stood in that church 3 weeks ago and offered grace to everyone here. To Ruth, who feeds her children the only way she can. To Jacob, who loves his brother. To all of you who've made hard choices just to survive. Are you going to extend that same grace to me? Or does grace have limits when it's inconvenient? Silence. The crowd shifted, uncertain. Then Ruth stepped forward. I'll extend it. Girls got more courage than most of us ever will. And she's not wrong, we all survive however we can out here. Who are we to judge? Jacob, the young ranch hand, moved to stand beside Ruth. I stand with Eleanor. She stood for us. I'll stand for her. Mrs. Chen appeared from somewhere, arms crossed, expression fierce. Anyone have problem with Eleanor, have problem with me. She good woman, make own choice. That all that matter. One by one, people moved, some toward Eleanor standing with her. Others backed away, unwilling to associate, but also unwilling to condemn. Jensen found himself increasingly isolated, his support crumbling. Samuel appeared from the church looking haggard and lost. He saw Eleanor standing between the twins, saw the town splitting over her, saw everything he'd feared coming to pass. Father, Eleanor said quietly, I need you to choose. Are you with me or against me? Samuel looked at his daughter, at the two men flanking her, at the crowd waiting for his judgment. His voice broke. I'm trying to be with you, Eleanor. God help me, I'm trying. But I don't know how to reconcile this with everything I believe. Then maybe it's time to examine what you believe, Eleanor said gently, and decide if it's actually God's truth or just man's fear dressed up as virtue. Samuel closed his eyes. Tears tracked down his face. I need time. Take all the time you need, but know this, I'm not waiting for your permission anymore. I'm living my life, with or without your blessing. She turned away before he could respond, turned back to the twins who'd stood silent through everything, letting her fight her own battles, but ready to step in if she needed them. Take me home, she said quietly. The ranch, Kate asked. Home, Eleanor repeated. Because that's what it is now. Home. They left town behind the whispers, the judgment, the father who couldn't yet accept what his daughter had become. They rode back to the M as the sun climbed higher, burning away morning mist, revealing the world in sharp clarity. Eleanor sat between the twins in the wagon, their solid presence on either side, grounding her. She'd made her choice, declared it publicly, burned every bridge back to the life she'd left behind. The fear she'd expected didn't come. Instead, she felt light, unburdened, free. "You okay?" Cole asked. "I'm better than okay," Eleanor said and meant it. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Cade's hand found hers. "Welcome home, Eleanor." Home. Not a place, but a choice. A commitment. 3 people building something new in the wreckage of everything they'd been taught to want. Eleanor looked out at the vast frontier spreading before them and smiled. Let the world call it scandal. She'd call it survival. She'd call it courage. She'd call it the beginning of a life lived honestly without apology, without shame. She'd call it love, and that she thought was all that mattered. The first weeks at the ranch passed in a rhythm Eleanor had never known existed: work and laughter and quiet moments that felt stolen from a life she'd been told she couldn't have. She learned to cook on a wood stove that required constant attention, to mend shirts torn by barbed wire, to read the sky for weather that could make the difference between a good year and a hard one. The twins taught her everything. Cole showed her how to handle a rifle, his hand steady over hers as he corrected her aim. Cade taught her the ranch accounts, trusting her with numbers that represented their entire livelihood. Both of them made space for her in a life that had been theirs alone, reshaping it to hold 3 instead of 2. And at night in the room they shared, Eleanor learned that intimacy wasn't just physical. It was Cole's quiet confession about the parents they'd lost to fever when they were 17. It was Cade's careful questions about her mother gone too young to consumption. It was 3 people learning to be vulnerable in the darkness, building trust one truth at a time. But the outside world didn't disappear just because Eleanor had found happiness inside the ranch boundaries. Letters arrived from Boston, her father's sister horrified by rumors that had somehow traveled east. Former friends who wrote in tones of pity and condemnation. Eleanor burned them all without reading past the first few lines. Those people had never truly known her. Their judgment meant nothing. The judgment that came from Coyote Ridge was harder to ignore. Jensen and his supporters made their displeasure known in small, petty ways. Supplies ordered through the general store arrived late or not at all. Ranch hands who came to town for supplies were refused service at certain establishments. Whispers followed Eleanor the few times she ventured into town, not loud enough to confront, but audible enough to sting. Ruth and Mrs. Chen and a handful of others remained steadfast allies, but they were a minority. Most of the town had settled into an uneasy disapproval, not violent, but not accepting either. Samuel remained caught somewhere in between. He preached on Sundays about love and grace, but he couldn't look his daughter in the eye when she attended services. Eleanor went anyway, sitting in the back with the twins, flanking her, daring anyone to ask her to leave. No one did. But no one welcomed her either. 6 weeks after Eleanor moved to the ranch, trouble came in the form of a stranger riding up to the house at sunset. He was well-dressed, official-looking, with papers in his saddlebag, and an expression that said he'd traveled far for an unpleasant task. Cole and Cade were both outside when he arrived. Eleanor watched from the kitchen window as they spoke with him, saw their postures stiffen, saw Cole's hands curl into fists. When they came inside, their faces were grim. "What is it?" Eleanor set down the pot she'd been washing. "That was a territorial marshal," Cade said heavily. "Someone filed a complaint. Said we're—" He stopped, choosing words carefully. "Said we're keeping you here against your will, forcing you into immoral arrangements." Eleanor's blood went cold. "Jensen?" "Probably. Marshall says he has to investigate. Has to interview you separately without us present to ensure you're not being coerced." "That's ridiculous. I'll tell him—" "It's not that simple." Cole's jaw was tight. "Marshall has authority to remove you from the property if he determines you're in danger. Take you back to town, put you in your father's custody until he's satisfied you're here voluntarily. I'm 22 years old. My father has no custody over me. By law, unmarried women are under their father's authority until they marry," Cade said quietly. "It's archaic, but it's still on the books, And since you're not married to either of us, can't be married to both of us legally, you're still Samuel's responsibility." Eleanor felt the walls closing in. "So, what do I do?" The twins looked at each other. Some conversation passed between them that Eleanor couldn't quite read. "You talk to the marshal," Cole said finally. "You tell him the truth. That you're here by choice. That we've never forced or coerced you. That you're happy. And if he doesn't believe me, then we fight it," Cade said. "But Eleanor, you need to understand, if the marshal removes you, if he puts you back under your father's authority, Samuel could send you east, could put you on a train back to Boston before we could stop him." The thought made Eleanor's chest tight with panic. He wouldn't. He might. If he thinks it's for your own good. If he's convinced himself that we've somehow corrupted you beyond redemption. Cade's voice was gentle but honest. Love makes people do desperate things. Eleanor sank into a chair, mind racing. She'd thought making her choice was the hard part. She'd thought standing in front of the town and declaring her decision was the ultimate test. But this was different. This was the law backed by a society that didn't recognize her right to choose her own life. "When does he want to talk to me?" "Tomorrow morning. He's staying in town tonight. Said he'll come by at first light." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Then I'll tell him the truth. All of it. And if he tries to take me anyway..." She looked at both of them. "Don't fight him. Don't make this worse by resisting a territorial marshal. Promise me." "Eleanor," Cole started. "Promise me. If he takes me, you let him. Because I'll come back. I'll find a way. But I won't let you both end up arrested or shot trying to keep me." Cade's hand covered hers. "We're not losing you. You won't. But you have to trust me to handle this my way." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay between the twins, feeling their breath synchronize in sleep, memorizing the weight of their bodies against hers. If tomorrow went badly, if the marshal decided she was being held against her will despite her protests, this might be the last night they spent together for a long time. The thought was unbearable. Eleanor slipped out of bed, carefully pulled on a robe, and went outside. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like salt spilled on black cloth. She stood on the porch hugging herself, trying to find courage in the vastness. Couldn't sleep either. She turned. Samuel stood at the edge of the porch, hat in hand, looking older than he had 6 weeks ago. "Father, what are you doing here?" "The marshal came to see me, asked about you, about whether I thought you were being held against your will." Samuel climbed the steps slowly. "I told him I didn't know, that I hadn't spoken to you properly in weeks. And he took that as confirmation I'm being coerced. He took it as reason to investigate." Samuel stopped a few feet away. "Eleanor, I need to know, are you happy here truly?" Eleanor studied her father in the starlight. He looked haggard, uncertain, stripped of the confidence that had always defined him. "I'm happier than I've ever been," she said quietly. "I know you don't understand. I know this breaks everything you believe about how life should work. But Father, I've never felt more myself than I do here. Never felt more seen, more valued, more loved." "By 2 men," Samuel said. "That's not love, Eleanor. That's what sin perversion?" Eleanor's voice hardened. "Or is it just different from what you're comfortable with? It's not natural." "Says who?" "You, the church society." Eleanor moved closer. "Father, you stood in that church and offered grace to people living lives you didn't understand. You said God was bigger than your rules. Did you mean any of that? Or was it just words?" Samuel's face crumpled. "I meant it. But Eleanor, you're my daughter. That makes it different, makes it harder." "Why? Because you can't control the outcome. Can't guarantee my happiness by forcing me into a life you approve of. Because I love you." The words burst out of Samuel like they'd been held too long under pressure. Because the thought of losing you, of you being hurt or ruined or destroyed by choices I could have prevented, it destroys me. You're not losing me. I'm right here. No, you're not. You're someone I don't recognize. Someone who lives in defiance of everything decent and proper, and Samuel stopped breath hitching. Someone who doesn't need me anymore. The truth of it settled between them. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. I'll always need you, Father. Just not to make my choices for me. Not to stand between me and the life I want. She reached for his hand. But I need you to be my father. To love me even when you don't understand me. Can you do that? Samuel looked at their joined hands, at his daughter's face, so like her mother's, so full of the same fierce determination that had made him fall in love decades ago. I don't know, he whispered. I want to. God knows I want to. But Eleanor, when that marshal came asking questions, part of me wanted to say yes. Wanted to tell him to take you away from here, put you on a train east, save you from this scandal. But you didn't. No, because the other part of me, the part that remembers you as a little girl, asking impossible questions, challenging every rule I tried to teach you, that part knows you'd never forgive me. And I can't lose you that completely. Eleanor pulled him into a hug, feeling him shake with silent sobs. You're not losing me at all, unless you choose to. That's the only way you lose me, Father. By rejecting who I actually am in favor of who you wish I was. They stood that way for a long moment, father and daughter, trying to find their way back to each other across an impossible divide. What should I tell the marshal? Samuel finally asked. Tell him the truth. That I'm here by choice. That I'm happy. That Cole and Cade treat me with respect and care. Eleanor pulled back to meet his eyes. Tell him that even though you don't understand my choice, you recognize it's mine to make. And if he doesn't believe me, then I'll convince him myself. Samuel nodded slowly. You're so much stronger than I ever was, than I ever will be. I learned it from you. You came west to build something new. I'm just doing the same thing. This isn't what I meant. I know, but it's what I need. Eleanor squeezed his hand. Go home, Father. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll deal with the marshal together. Samuel left reluctantly. Eleanor returned to the bedroom to find Cole awake watching the door. How much did you hear? Enough. Cole's voice was rough. Your father loves you, even if he doesn't know how to show it. I know. Eleanor climbed back into bed, settling between the twins. But love without acceptance is just another kind of cage. Then we'll make sure you never end up in one. Cade's arm came around her waist, solid and reassuring. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're in this together. Eleanor closed her eyes and let their warmth surround her. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight she had this two men who loved her enough to let her be free, even as they held her close. That was worth fighting for. The marshal arrived at dawn, official and stern, and clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. He interviewed Eleanor alone, while the twins waited outside, their tension palpable, even through closed doors. Miss Hartwell, the marshal began. Notebook open. I need you to be completely honest with me. Are you here of your own free will? Completely. The Maddox brothers haven't threatened you, coerced you, made you fear for your safety if you try to leave. The only people making me fear for my safety are the townspeople who think they have the right to dictate my choices. Eleanor met his eyes steadily. Marshal, I came here voluntarily. I stay here voluntarily. And if you try to remove me, I'll fight you every step of the way. The marshal studied her carefully. Your father seems uncertain about your situation. My father is struggling to accept that his daughter isn't the person he thought she was. That doesn't mean I'm in danger. It means he's grieving the loss of his expectations. You understand that your arrangement with the Maddox brothers is highly irregular, that most people would consider it immoral. Most people considered abolition immoral once, considered women voting immoral, considered a lot of things immoral that we now recognize as basic human rights. Eleanor kept her voice level. I'm not asking for society's approval. I'm asking for the freedom to make my own choices about my own life. You're asking for something most women don't have the courage to demand. Or maybe they just don't have the freedom to demand it. Maybe they're trapped by circumstances or expectations, or fear of what happens when they step outside the lines. Eleanor leaned forward. I'm fortunate enough to have choices. I won't apologize for making them, even when they make other people uncomfortable. The marshal was quiet for a long moment, pen hovering over his notebook. Miss Hartwell, I came here expecting to find a woman being held prisoner, or a woman who'd been corrupted beyond her own awareness. What I'm finding is something else entirely. What's that? A woman who knows exactly what she wants and has the strength to pursue it. He closed his notebook. I can't say I understand your choice, but I can say you're clearly making it with full awareness of the consequences. Eleanor's breath left her in a rush. So you won't remove me? I have no grounds to. You're an adult making informed decisions about your own life. The law may not approve, but it also can't force you to live according to someone else's morality. He stood. That said, Miss Hartwell, you should know there will be continued pressure. From the town, from people who think they're protecting you, from those who see your choices as a threat to their own carefully controlled lives. This isn't over. I know, but I'd rather fight for the life I want than accept the life I'm told I should have. The marshal actually smiled. Your father must have his hands full with you. He's learning to let go. It's hard for him. It's hard for every parent, but the good ones learn to do it anyway. He tipped his hat. Good luck, Miss Hartwell. I think you're going to need it. He left, and Eleanor sagged with relief. The twins came in immediately, reading her face. He's not taking you, Cole said, relief flooding his voice. No, he says I'm clearly here by choice, that he has no grounds to remove me. Cade pulled her into his arms. Thank God. Thank Eleanor, Cole corrected. She's the one who convinced him. It's not over, Eleanor warned. He said there'll be continued pressure, that people will keep trying to... Let them try, Cade said fiercely. You're ours, and we're not letting go. The possessiveness should have rankled. Instead, it felt like safety, not ownership, but belonging. Being claimed by people who also let her be free. We should go to town, Eleanor said suddenly. Now, while the marshal's still there, make it clear that his investigation found nothing wrong. That's risky, Cole said. Jensen and his people are going to be furious either way. At least this way we control the narrative. Eleanor straightened her shoulders. We go in together. We face them together, and we show them that we're not ashamed and we're not afraid. The twins exchanged a glance, then nodded. Together, Cade agreed. They rode into town to find a crowd already gathering. News traveled fast on the frontier, and everyone wanted to hear the marshal's verdict. Jensen stood at the center face, red with anticipation. The marshal was outside the boarding house preparing to leave. He saw Eleanor and the twins arrive and stopped. Marshal, Jensen called, you're removing her, yes, taking her away from these degenerates. The marshal's expression hardened. I'm doing no such thing. Miss Hartwell is here of her own volition. My investigation found no evidence of coercion or mistreatment. The crowd stirred. Jensen's face went from red to purple. That's impossible. She's clearly been brainwashed, manipulated into what? Eleanor stepped forward, voice ringing clear. Into making choices about my own life, into loving people who treat me with respect, into building a life that makes me happy even if it doesn't fit your narrow definition of propriety. You're living in sin. I'm living honestly. That's more than most people in this town can say. Eleanor looked around at the crowd. How many of you are in marriages you didn't choose? How many are trapped by circumstances or expectations or fear of what happens if you admit you want something different? How many are living lies because truth is too expensive? Silence. People shifted uncomfortable. I'm not asking you to approve of my choices, Eleanor continued. I'm asking you to recognize that they're mine to make. That I'm a person with agency and autonomy, not a child requiring your protection or a woman requiring your permission. Ruth stepped forward again. She's right. We're all so busy judging each other we forget we're supposed to be a community, supposed to support each other's survival, not tear each other down. Mrs. Chen joined her. Eleanor, never judge anyone here. Never look down on saloon girls or ranch hands or anyone struggling. She just live her life. Why we not let her? More people moved, some toward Eleanor offering support. Others stayed back, unwilling to condone, but also unwilling to condemn. Jensen found himself increasingly isolated. Samuel appeared from the church walking slowly. The crowd parted for him. He stopped in front of his daughter and Eleanor's heart clenched. This was it, her father's final choice. Eleanor, Samuel said quietly, I've been praying, asking God what to do, what's right. And what did God tell you? Eleanor tried to keep her voice steady. Nothing clear, nothing simple. Samuel's eyes were red-rimmed. But I keep coming back to something you said. That love without acceptance is just another cage. And I don't want to cage you, Eleanor. Even when I don't understand you. Even when your choices terrify me. Eleanor's throat tightened. Father, I'm not saying I approve. I'm not saying I understand. But I'm saying... Samuel's voice broke. I'm saying you're my daughter and I love you. And if that means accepting a life I never imagined for you, then I'll learn how to do that. Because losing you completely is worse than struggling with my discomfort. Eleanor threw her arms around him, tears streaming. Thank you. Godfather, thank you. Samuel held her tight. I may never be comfortable with this. I may always worry. But I won't let my fear destroy our relationship. Not anymore. The crowd watched this reconciliation with varying expressions. Some looked moved. Others looked skeptical. But no one spoke against it. Jensen, seeing his support crumble, made one last attempt. This is an outrage. The church should offer grace, Samuel said, pulling back from Eleanor, but keeping one hand on her shoulder. Grace without conditions. Love without limits. That's what I should have been preaching all along. He turned to address the crowd. I came here thinking I knew God's plan, thinking I knew what salvation looked like. But my daughter has taught me that God is bigger than my understanding, that love takes forms I'll never fully comprehend, and that my job as a father and as a minister isn't to judge. It's to support people as they find their own paths to happiness and truth. It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was acceptance. And for Eleanor, that was enough. The crowd dispersed slowly. Some approached Eleanor with awkward congratulations or words of support. Others left quickly, unwilling to associate. Jensen stormed off, defeated, but not broken. There would be more trouble from him, Eleanor knew. But for now, this battle was won. The marshal mounted his horse, tipped his hat to Eleanor one last time, and rode out. Pike watched him go, and then approached the trio. Well, he said dryly, that was something. You three are either the bravest people I've ever met, or the craziest. Can't it be both? Cole asked with a grin. Usually is. Pike spat tobacco juice. For what it's worth, I think you'll make it. 3 people that stubborn, nothing can break that. He walked away. Eleanor looked at the twins, then back at her father, then at the town that was slowly, reluctantly learning to accept that people could love differently and still build something good. What now? She asked. Now we go home, Cade said. And we live our lives, together. People will still talk, Cole warned. Let them. Talk doesn't hurt unless we let it. They left town with Samuel's blessing tentative and uncertain but real. They returned to the ranch as the sun climbed higher, burning away shadows, revealing the land in all its harsh beauty. Eleanor looked out at the vastness spreading before them and felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace. There would be more battles, more judgment, more people who couldn't accept what she'd built. But something close to it. Something that felt like belonging. The months that followed weren't easy. Jensen and his supporters continued their campaign of petty harassment. Supplies remained hard to get. Some townspeople refused to do business with the Maddox ranch. But others slowly came around, drawn by the twins' fair dealings and Eleanor's quiet competence as she took on more responsibility for the ranch operations. Samuel preached his modified gospel of grace and acceptance, losing some congregants, but gaining others, people who'd felt judged and found by conventional religion, who needed a church that made space for complicated lives and imperfect choices. Ruth and Mrs. Chen became Eleanor's closest friends, forming a tight circle of women who supported each other against a world that wanted them smaller and quieter and more ashamed. And through it all, the three of them, Cole, Cade, and Eleanor, built something that defied every rule about how relationships were supposed to work. They fought and reconciled. They learned each other's rhythms and needs. They figured out how to love without possession, how to share without jealousy, how to be three individuals and one unit at the same time. It wasn't perfect. Cole's temper flared when Eleanor took risks he thought unnecessary. Cade's caution frustrated her when she wanted to act quickly. She drove them both crazy with her stubbornness and refusal to back down from confrontation. But they made it work because the alternative, losing each other, was unthinkable. 2 years after Eleanor stepped off that wagon in Coyote Ridge, the community hall stood completed. It was larger than the original church plan, with space for services, but also for dances, meetings, celebrations. The town gathered for the dedication, and Samuel stood at the front with Eleanor beside him. "This building represents something my daughter taught me," Samuel said. "That community isn't built by forcing people into boxes they don't fit. It's built by making space for all the ways humans find connection and purpose, by offering grace instead of judgment, by recognizing that love in all its forms is what makes us human." He looked at Eleanor with tears in his eyes. "My daughter took a risk, made a choice most people wouldn't have the courage to make. And in doing so, she showed us all what's possible when we stop living by fear and start living by truth." The crowd applauded, not everyone, but enough. Eleanor looked out and saw Ruth with her children healthy and fed. Saw Jacob and his partner standing openly together now without shame. Saw Mrs. Chen smiling her quiet smile. Saw Pike nodding approval. And she saw Cole and Cade standing at the back, watching her with pride and love so clear it made her chest ache. After the ceremony, as people mingled and ate and celebrated, Samuel pulled Eleanor aside. "I want you to know something," he said quietly. "I'm proud of you. Terrified for you, constantly worried about you, but proud. You're braver than I ever was." "You came west," Eleanor reminded him. "That took courage. I came west thinking I knew all the answers. You came west willing to ask questions. That's the difference." He hugged her. "Your mother would be proud too. She always said you'd change the world somehow. I just changed my own life. That's all. Sometimes that's the same thing." Eleanor watched him walk back to the crowd, this man who'd tried so hard to shape her into something safe and familiar, and who'd finally learned to love the dangerous, unfamiliar woman she'd become. That evening, as the three of them returned to the ranch, Eleanor felt the weight of the past 2 years settle into perspective. She'd lost some things. Her innocence, her father's unquestioning approval, her place in conventional society. But she'd gained so much more. She'd gained herself, her voice, her power, her right to choose her own path and walk it without apology. And she'd gained 2 men who loved her, not despite her strength, but because of it, who saw her as a partner, not a possession, who built a life with her instead of for her. Cole drove the wagon while Cade sat beside Eleanor in the back, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "Happy?" he asked quietly. Eleanor looked at him, then up at Cole's broad back, then out at the land that had become home. "More than I ever knew I could be," she said, "even with all the judgment, all the hardship. Especially with it, because it means I chose this, really chose it, fought for it, earned it." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "Easy things aren't worth having. This is worth everything." They reached the ranch as full dark fell. The house glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming, a beacon in the vast frontier night. They went inside together, these three people who'd found each other against all odds and built something society said couldn't exist. Later, lying in bed between them, Eleanor thought about the girl who'd stepped off that wagon 2 years ago. Proper scared, so certain she knew who she was and what she wanted. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who'd learned that wanting more than you're told you can have isn't greed, it's courage. That breaking rules isn't rebellion, it's growth. That love isn't diminished when it's shared, it's multiplied. The frontier had taught her that survival takes many forms. That strength comes in different packages. That the only unforgivable sin is living a lie when truth is possible. "Eleanor." Cole's voice came soft in the darkness. "You awake?" "Yeah." "I love you. Just wanted to say that." "I love you too," Cade added. "Both of you. All of this." Eleanor smiled into the darkness. "I love you both, more than words can hold." They fell asleep tangled together, 3 hearts beating in rhythm, 3 souls choosing each other every day, despite everything trying to pull them apart. Years later, when Eleanor was old and the frontier had given way to something more civilized, people would ask her about her life. About how she'd managed to build something impossible. About whether she'd ever regretted her choices. And Eleanor, with silver in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes, would smile and say no. Never once. Because she'd learned early that some things are worth any cost, truth, freedom, and love, that doesn't ask you to be smaller than you are. She'd learned that scandal fades, but courage endures. That judgment hurts less than living a lie. That the only opinion that matters is the one you hold of yourself when you look in the mirror. She'd learned that home isn't a place, it's a choice you make every day to build something good with the people who see you clearly and love you anyway. And she'd learned that sometimes the greatest act of faith isn't believing in heaven after death, but believing in the possibility of heaven here and now in the arms of people who let you be free while holding you close in a life lived honestly. Despite every force demanding you pretend in the wild courage of choosing yourself over safety. Eleanor Hartwell. The preacher's daughter who defied the frontier, lived and loved and laughed until her final breath, surrounded not by regret, but by the family she built from nothing but courage and the refusal to accept limits on what love could be, and that she knew in her bones was exactly what salvation looked like.